Hello and welcome. I was thinking the other day about a story from my childhood. It was about my grandmother. My grandmother swore that there was a day when she was in her teenage years that she saw a UFO crash onto the land and, ready, a little green man jumped out of the UFO. It's one of those stories that we heard when we were children and we all laughed at. We were, of course, thinking what you're probably thinking at home. My grandmother was crazy. Of course, that didn't happen to her. That sounds just insane. The idea that a spacecraft landed and a green man jumped out is insane. And I always thought that my grandmother was a little crazy. I didn't have the closest relationship with her, and we would always talk about that story and just dismiss it. Recently, however, my grandmother has long since passed, but recently, if you have been following the news, there seems to be a lot of coverage about UFOs. People are doing 60 Minutes now. They're sitting down. They're talking about how the military has always known that there have been unidentified flying objects, and they don't know what they are. They defy gravity. They're now even releasing videos. They're declassifying videos that they've held on to for decades. It made me think. It just actually made me think about that story from my childhood in a weird capacity, because while a lot of people are celebrating and going, look, our government is being honest, they're being transparent, they're showing us all of these things that we didn't know were going on behind the scenes, I started thinking about the people that have been saying this for years and yet were diagnosed, like my grandmother, and dismissed, like my grandmother, as crazy people. The tinfoil hats, they're all nuts. For decades and decades, our government knew that there were people that were seeing the same things that they were seeing, and they allowed them to be called crazy. They said there's no way it didn't happen. These people are, ready, you know the word, conspiracy theorists. They're all conspiracy theorists. So I started thinking about all of the other people that have been called conspiracy theorists lately. Of course, notoriously, we are now learning that there seems to be some substance, at least something that requires a further examination regarding the Wuhan lab leak once upon a time conspiracy theory. Now, all of a sudden, there seems to be some merit to that, and the government's going, actually, yes, okay, we're gonna actually take a look and see what happens. But of course, for the entire last year during lockdowns, anybody that even mentioned the Wuhan lab leak theory was not only called a conspiracy theorist, but they were wiped from the internet. People lost their Twitter accounts, they lost their Facebook accounts because they were being crazy and even at times called racist conspiracy theorists. And of course, notoriously, there was our former President Trump who said that hydroxychloroquine was successful in working to combat COVID-19. Everybody said that was crazy. That was a conspiracy theory. If you were a person who was trying to get your hands on hydroxychloroquine, you were a crazy person that was taking medicine from people that needed it. In fact, governors actually made it illegal to get a prescription in some states of hydroxychloroquine. That's how much of a conspiracy theory it was until, of course, last week. Now, a new study has been published by medRxiv, which found that hydroxychloroquine and zinc treatments in patients increased COVID survival by almost 3 times. A full year of telling people they were crazy, governors taking the drug away, which could have actually saved lives, only to be told that, yes, the conspiracy theorists were telling the truth. The flip of that, though, is also something to consider. The flip of that is that people that we're supposed to trust have been telling us things that actually turned out to be falsehoods. For example, notoriously, there was the Russia-gate conspiracy theory. Russia helped Trump get elected. Russia. The Steele dossier, Russia, Trump, he's doing things with Russia. All of this stuff is happening. They're looking into it. There's an investigation. 2 entire years wasted of incessant media coverage, only to learn that it was, in fact, a conspiracy theory. There was nothing there. Didn't matter. The press moved on. A recent one from memory, of course, is January 6th. We were told there was an insurrection, a violent insurrection in which a police officer was bludgeoned to death with a fire extinguisher. That is brutal, incredibly brutal, despicable if it was true. But it wasn't true. It was another made-up media conspiracy theory. No consequence, though, because they just keep going. Notoriously, when Trump was in office, he was also accused of gassing his protesters in order to get a photo op with a Bible in D.C. You remember that? The press was rabid telling us that he gassed protesters. Then, of course, quietly, very recently, almost a year later, they admit, no, that wasn't true. That was completely made up. I'm beginning to notice a trend that is happening as of late. The conspiracy theorists, the crazy people, the tinfoil hat people, they seem to keep getting it right. On the other hand, the journalists, the people that we are supposed to trust, people that have degrees, the people that have shows, the people that are supposed to be telling us the truth about our government, they keep getting it wrong. And there seems to be no consequence either way. I loved musicals when I was a kid, and there is a wonderful quote from The Wizard of Oz that I'm going to share with you guys now, and that quote is, "Down is up is down. Good is wicked, wicked is good. The times are changing. This is what Oz has come to." I would argue that this is what America has come to.